That's Spike. He's one of my 3 dogs. I have 1 big and 2 littles. He's been a good, good boy. I rescued him from the SPCA of Solano County after they had rescued him and several others from the pound, the animal lockup in Oakland, California, in the Bay Area. He's got a little tattoo on his inner thigh. He was marked for death the next day. He was going to be gassed. So they went in and rescued him and a whole bunch of others. And then they couldn't adopt him out because he was so mean. He's a little scrapper. The SPCA of Solano County named him Elliot. They said his name is Elliot. So when I adopted him, I said, yeah, no, you're not an Elliot. You're a Spike. Oh, Spike. Mm. So now we've had a Spike sighting. So it's going to be a good week of shows. That's how we decide. Oh, my little friend. There he goes. He loves to do that. Even while I'm driving. I'm Charlie Simons. This is Do Not Talk, where I talk about the 2 things you're never supposed to talk about, religion and politics, because they're important. And I have a guest on today named Jack Hibbs. He's the pastor at Calvary Chapel in Chino Hills, which is down in Southern California. He is one of those pastors that I absolutely admire for his boldness in speaking out. I see a lot of pastors have not been speaking out on what the evil that's going on, especially in the state of California. Pastors are silent because the 501(c) is the charitable organization they're under instead of the 508, which was what the original nonprofit was for religious organizations, where the government couldn't tell you what you could say and couldn't say. Well, now they threaten these 501(c)s, these churches and these pastors. If you speak out against things that we don't like, you speaking out against, we're going to take away your tax exempt status. Jack Hibbs doesn't care. He just doesn't care. So the interview with him was over the phone. So you're not going to ask you. We'll put up a photo of him so you know what he looks like. But the information is fantastic, and so is he. Huh, Spike. But before we get going, I wanted to share with you something that didn't get a lot of press in the media. It was that man that some of you call the president of the United States threatening to destroy the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which now it has happened. Both the Nord Stream 2 and the Nord Stream 1 pipelines, which was Russia's pipeline for natural gas and oil to Germany. They've been blown up. They've been destroyed. It's obvious that it wasn't an accident, and it wasn't some kind of disruption in the sea or anything like that. There's seismic activity there, and it's not an earthquake. It's the kind you get from an explosion. Now, everybody's saying in the media, in the mainstream media, these clowns are literally saying, well, Russia did it themselves just to escalate and just to do that. And they try and fill in the blanks and make it sound reasonable that Russia would destroy the very pipeline that they built to make money, and a lot of money they make off of it. But they destroyed it themselves? Yeah. Here is a press conference that you didn't see on the NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. This is with the German chancellor, where Biden is asked by a reporter this very important question.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Chancellor Scholz. Mr. President, I have wanted to ask you about this Nord Stream project that you've long opposed. You didn't mention it just now by name, nor did Chancellor Scholz. Did you receive assurances from Chancellor Scholz today that Germany will, in fact, pull the plug on this project if Russia invades Ukraine? And did you discuss what the definition of invasion could be? And then Chancellor Scholz, wenn ich Sie fragen darf,
if I may ask you, Chancellor Scholz.
This is where the translator comes in and starts, telling them what they're saying, and the translator's microphone was on, so it interrupts her question, the woman from Reuters. So we'll forward then to Biden's answer.
tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again, then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
With his little grin. He gives a little grin, and that's it. That's what I wanted you to see. He literally promised that, oh, yeah, we'll get it done. We will destroy that pipeline if he dares invade Ukraine. But yet, the media is telling you we had nothing to do with it. Those are Biden's own words. February, we'll do it. September, we didn't do it. This aged well, didn't it? Finally, a politician that keeps his promises. You could look at it that way. I promise you we will be able to do it, he said with a smile on his face. Looks like finally Biden, for once, told the truth. Pastor Jack Hibbs is coming up next here on Do Not Talk. I'm looking forward to you hearing what he has to say next. Hit it.
Yep, here he comes. Riding his trusted steed through the Sierra foothills as he brings you the news. He calls himself
Charlie!
What you doing, Charlie?
Sorry, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie, there you are. Look how cute you are. Yeah!
Hey, Charlie. What's with the dark glasses?
And now, here he is, a man of God, living in a world of Disney.
Ow! Charlie!
Charlie Simons.
Charlie bit me.
This is Do Not Talk. I'm your host, Charlie Simons. Why is it called Do Not Talk? Because I talk about the two things you're never supposed to talk about, politics and religion. Flat out, that's my go-to. And I got somebody on the phone right now that I am anxious to get to finally talk to because I've been following him for a while now. As a matter of fact, ever since the recall election of the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, which failed, there was a lot of nefarious stuff going on there. And I don't know about him. I'll ask him about this, but I know that there were incidents of voter fraud in that recall election. I know personally. I know people who it happened to them. His name is Jack Hibbs, and he's a pastor. And his church is Calvary Chapel, which I've been to several Calvary Chapels, and I really like them. He is down in Chino Hills. Where exactly is Chino Hills, Pastor?
Well, Chino Hills is obscure. It's the way we like it, but it's about 20 minutes, 15 minutes from those who would know the Anaheim area. So Anaheim Stadium is not all that far from us. That would be the point of reference.
Okay, very good. So you're close enough to the big city, but you got areas where you can get away from it all if you want.
Oh, yeah. Where we're at, we've got rolling hills, we've got oak trees, there's horses in the area. It's actually a little secret in Southern California, and we love it.
I was just going to say, you probably shouldn't have said all that now.
It's too late.
It's already out there. Chino Hills, I've never been. I do have family down in SoCal, but they're now all up at Big Bear Lake and San Bernardino, Riverside, that area. They've gotten out of Los Angeles. I started watching your videos because groups I'm in and being in the media myself, I had people sending me links to the videos that you do all the time. And they were all saying the same thing. Charlie, got to check this guy out. Charlie, this guy sounds like you. So I started watching, and they're right. You're not that I'm not calling myself extraordinary, but you definitely are extraordinary. And you were very active in that. As a matter of fact, it's my understanding, Larry Elder, who was the front runner to replace in that recall election, he really turned to you, and you're kind of the one that got him inspired to run for governor.
Yeah, if you might remember, Charlie, there was an original recall effort right before COVID shut it down. Do you remember that, when Newsom was being recalled the original time?
Yes.
And COVID wound up putting a kibosh on that.
Yeah.
It was during that initial recall where I had gone to Larry through Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager's a friend. And I asked Dennis, I said, the perfect candidate for this recall to have Newsom replaced would be a guy that would be unstoppable, and that would be Larry Elder. Do you think he would run? He goes, why don't you ask him? So Dennis gave me his number. I called him, and we began arguing from that time on as to why he should be the next one to be governor of California. And just talking a lot, he wound up talking with a few other friends, and obviously people know that he threw his hat in the ring, and I agree with you fully that there was a lot of creative voting taking place. Larry should have won hands down. In fact, if you take all of his opponents that ran in that spot, Larry got thousands of more votes over than all of the other candidates that ran combined. But here's the overriding twist. This was the largest and most accurate recall in American history. And then you're telling me that the California voter turns around and says no and keeps Newsom in office? No, it's just absolutely crazy. But it is what it is. And here we are today with a state that is basically severed itself from the other 49 states. It's almost as though Newsom is running the kingdom, and basically unchecked. And there's ways that we can actually prove that. And maybe we'll discuss some of that stuff today. But yeah, we are a church that is extremely involved. It's nothing new to us. We started this church 30 years ago with 6 people. Now we've got about 15,000 people every week on campus. And all along the way, we have been very, very involved in what you said. I love your show, what you said, and that is all we do talk about is faith and politics, because those are the 2 powerhouses of any person's life, is what you believe and who's in charge of your life. And so that's what we do. God's blessed it. It's been very successful. We're a church that has a tendency to create candidates, and they're doing pretty good. And I want to leave a good future to your grandkids and mine.
I hear 2 things a lot from the Democrats. One is separation of church and state, which, by the way, I will reiterate again and again, as many times as I need to, you're not going to find in the U.S. Constitution. There's no such thing as separation of church and state. So they love to throw that out as if you're supposed to just sit down, shut up, and take it and not say anything. But I'll tell you what, God's word tells us to call out evil.
Listen, I love what you just said. I'm not going to name the TV network that tried to nail me down just that very thing last Thursday. They asked me a question about abortion, and I was responding to that, and the anchor didn't like my answer and said, I just spoke with Gloria Allred, and she said, you're wrong, Pastor, that there's a separation of church and state. And I said, where is that at in our founding documents?
Right.
And he said it's in the First Amendment. I said, sir, it is not in the First Amendment. And he said, it is too. And I said, go read it. It's not there. And I don't know if you ever read it, but they said, we're going to a commercial now, and I never got a chance to come back. I'm telling you, people just assume the CNN version of the First Amendment says that a church can't get involved in anything, quote, political. But Charlie, look what's happened in our culture. Number one, thank God the First Amendment doesn't say that. Second of all, notice that whenever the politicians want to usurp authority over our culture and or religion, they never talk about separation of church and state. It's only when the church says, hey, what are you doing? Abortion is a spiritual issue. It's not a political issue. Or the definition of marriage, that's a biblical issue. That's not a political issue. But they're counting on, Charlie, running in, grabbing the topic, raising their flag of secularism or the religion of the Democrats, and saying, you can't come over here now. We took this from you. It's ours. and we have just made it a secular issue. You have no say. And I refuse to let that happen. And what my desire is that pastors in California would encourage their congregations to register to vote, to take what they learn on Sunday and literally live it Monday through Saturday, and then go back next Sunday and get refueled at church, but get out there and do the right thing. Jesus had told us from the beginning that we are to let his righteousness through our light affect the culture around us, that when people see our good works, they'll glorify our Father which is in heaven. And so that's a tremendous statement of cultural engagement. It's not taken seriously much anymore, but the church has got to get outside of her walls and back out into the streets. I believe the homeless problem can be fixed by the church. I believe these issues of racism can be fixed by the church. We've got to stop the narrative that has been commandeered and twisted for the benefit of some new government or some new vision of what our government should be like. If we get back to the founders, it worked great, Charlie, for 245 years. If we got back to what they laid down for us, we'd be on our feet overnight. We could love one another. We could take care of each other. It's just mobilizing Christians to get active again.
You mentioned one of the other two things I was going to say the Democrats always throw out there that shuts down people who are thinking with some common sense, a little critical thought. And that is they change the narrative. You mentioned narrative. They love to change the narrative. They'll take something really ugly like Senator Weiner, who's always given every one of his bills some kind of because we care about children act. They change the narrative. They lie in what they present. And they also take things that are ugly. And you brought it up, LGBTQ. I don't call it that. It is homosexual. It's a sexual sin. And I'm not saying it's any worse than any other sexual sin, but the Apostle Paul wrote that sexual sin is a sin against our own bodies, which sets it apart. Every time a Christian says, well, sin is sin. Not according to Paul. Maybe you know more than Paul does. He said sexual sin is a sin against our own bodies. So whether it's homosexual, whether it's adultery, whether it's outside of wedlock, it is a sexual sin. Definitely when you're including children, it'd be better if you were to tie a millstone around your neck and cast yourself into the sea than to jack with kids. So they changed the narrative. It's now no longer child molestation. It's now, what is it they're calling it? Minor attracted or attracted to minors or something like that.
Yeah, some propensity toward adolescence.
LGBTQ, I'm not going to call it that. I'm not going to use your narrative. I'm going to call it what it is. But that's what they do. They change the narrative all the time. And what bothers me, Pastor Jack Hibbs, is pastors and politicians on the right and even conservative media falling in line and using that same narrative.
Do you know what the thing is, Charlie? I love what you're saying. They seize the narrative and then immediately go into the intimidation mode. If you disagree with us,
we'll set you down.
We will get furious. We will get upset. We are going to we're going to call you names and shame you, and people cower. They back up and panic.
Yes, they do, and I'm sick of that.
Yep.
Sick of that. God did not give us a spirit of fear. I fear one, and that is the creator of the universe. That's the only fear I have. Other than that, I do not have a spirit of fear. And I'm not going to let somebody shut me down or try and railroad me or force me into coercion or even worse, shutting up. Because shutting up, as far as I'm concerned, is complying and even endorsing it just by not speaking out.
Silence is approval. And listen to you, Charlie. You sound like a free man. You sound like somebody who believes in the America that I grew up in, where if I didn't like what the guy next to me was talking about, I either debated it with him or I walked away. That was the world we lived in. We would debate, or if we didn't like something, we would turn the channel. And today we've got this thing where the culture that is will not rest because, I have this thought. They will not rest, Charlie, until they have at least some form of perception that you approve or you're going to tolerate their view. And yet they will not by any means allow you to be tolerated in any shape or form, or bring up Jesus. You can talk about Muhammad forever,
So right.
and it's not a problem.
Yes.
The moment you bring up Jesus, people freak out.
Yep.
And people need to, your listeners, if they don't already know, they need to know, isn't that interesting? Because I've been all around the world, and I don't know many languages, but I can tell you this. When somebody slams their fingers in the car door from Russia to Paris to the Philippines, they'll shout, and they'll shout a name, Jesus Christ. Isn't that weird?
Yes.
Why when they cuss, they use his name? Nobody slams their finger in the door and shouts Muhammad or Buddha.
Right.
Why? Because it's a spiritual issue. The issue is spiritual.
And it has power. And it has power. It's the
Absolutely.
name above all names. You're
That's
absolutely right. You're
That's it.
so right. And using it as a form of a cuss word is what the world has turned it into. And that name has power. I wouldn't be throwing around so lightly if I were them, but oh well.
Exactly.
This is Pastor Jack Hibbs. He is with Calvary Chapel in Chino Hills, California.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
I want to encourage people to follow you, not only find you on Facebook, but also on your webpage, which we're going to give in just a second. But just real quick, the whole main reason why I want to have you on, and I want to have you on again and again and again if we can.
Sure.
AB 2223, written by Buffy Wicks, who is just this absolute demonic little representative from Oakland, grew up in Auburn, California, which is a great conservative area. What happened to her when she went to Berkeley, I don't know. But she's now representing Oakland, and she wrote this bill. And every time the media says, well, that's a lie, if they even do cover it, which they don't, it is allowing the murder of a baby after it is born up to 28 days after. And this law is going to change, if it is signed into law. It will make it illegal for the coroner to even list the cause of death of the child.
That's correct.
And it will also allow the mother to legally sue any law enforcement agency that dares to say, that was out and out murder. Oh no, we're going after you for that. She can sue them for that.
That's right.
This is AB 2223. It's already gone through 3 committees. I'm not quite sure where it is now at this time.
Yeah, Charlie, I did some homework to bring you the latest, and you are exactly correct. And it is in what is called appropriations right now, which is very odd for this type of bill. Normally, this type of bill, Charlie, would have gone to public safety. It didn't do that. It went to appropriations because in appropriations is what they discuss regarding finance. How does this bill either negatively affect the state or positively affect the state? Very odd for this bill as it is written to go to appropriations. But what does that mean? Here's what it means. It's got to get out of appropriations by May 19th, Charlie. May 19th. If it's not voted on by midnight, May 19th, the bill automatically dies. So there's a chance that it could do that. You say, Jack, why would it die? Because thank God for this, Charlie. Buffy Wicks's office, number one, Buffy Wicks's office has been inundated with people calling in up and down the state, letting them know what they think about her bill. Number two is that there's been a letter writing campaign that we spearheaded up and down the state, just asking people to write a letter. It's a very powerful, effective tool to go to Buffy Wick's office. The third thing is this, that we have also encouraged every church that's in our 1,200 church network in California to contact their local assembly member for this reason. If it passes appropriations, Charlie, and it goes then to the assembly floor for a general vote, that means all assembly members will vote.
Right.
What we've been saying is this: everyone that's listening to this call needs to call their assembly member and tell them, it's simply this way, and I'm just quote, I'm watching how you vote on AB 2223. If you vote for it, I will see to it that you're not reelected. Thank you for taking my call. Goodbye. That's all you need to do.
That easy.
And so we know something. We have eyes and ears up in Sacramento, and this is what we do know, that she is getting heat from her assembly members. But Charlie, here's the dirty deed. Buffy Wicks, like you said, representing Oakland, this is actually, she's being the lackey for Gavin Newsom. Let me explain.
I knew it.
Gavin Newsom has worked with her to put up this bill because of the potential. They tested the wind and felt that, you know what, with all that's gone on, Roe v. Wade could be overturned. We want to solidify abortion in California. It's a big billion-dollar business here, and we don't want to take any chances. And she has been tapped to be the front or the tip of the spear for Newsom's desires on this. And so what we need to do is turn up the heat on our assembly members. I know I've called my guy 3 times, and I'm going to go to his office next. But this is how our republic works. Until God takes it away from us, we've got the right to speak to our elected officials. You got to tell them. AB 2223 murders a baby after it's born. People, listen. Charlie's telling you the truth. This is not a joke. The kid can be killed for any reason. A postpartum depression, act of violence, not investigated. A boyfriend that can't stand the kid crying at the age of 12 days, bashes the kid's head in, can't be investigated.
Yes.
The mother's doing drugs, takes heroin or something, and the baby dies 7 days later. Can't do a thing about it. The coroner cannot list cause of death, as you rightly said, cannot be investigated by law enforcement because the mother cannot in any way, shape, or form be looked at as being singled out. And then, Charlie, listen to this. Someone's going to say on the program right now, oh, you guys are blowing this out of proportion because there's already laws on the books to protect a child that's born alive. You got to protect the child. The doctor's got an oath. A citizen has an oath. Guess what? This bill is written in such a way that it literally says that it undoes previous bills, previous laws on the books regarding a born child. This law, if passed,
Just supersedes all of it.
undoes those bills.
Supersedes all of it.
Laws.
Right.
Yes.
Pastor Hibbs,
Literally
this is it makes my heart sick. It really does make my heart sick. The depravity that our own elected officials have fallen to is nothing short of demonic. This state has turned its back on God. I always say, may God bless America, but more importantly, may America bless God. And
That's
I'm
right.
telling you what, here's the worst part. Anybody who's watching outside of the state of California and you say, oh, it doesn't affect me. They're crazy Californians, a bunch of fruits and nuts. Well, you're right there. However, as California goes, time and time again, we've seen this throughout the history of this nation since California has come into being a major player. As California goes, so goes the rest of the nation. Maybe not as bad and dark and ugly as AB 2223, but some form of it. And if it happens here, it emboldens other like-minded clowns across the country to do the same.
Charlie, you are spot on. Washington State, Oregon State, already Maryland, Colorado, and Virginia are watching this bill to see how it goes and to see what they can learn from it to implement it in their states. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. What happens in California, just by virtue of our influence as a state, doesn't stay here at all.
Right. I thank you for the tip on calling our assembly person. Find out wherever you live. What's the best way to find out who represents you in the assembly? You just Google that?
Well,
Of course, I don't Google.
Yeah, there's 2 ways. You can, number one, simply wherever you live. I mean, you know what city you live in. You would say, who is my assembly member for Oakland, for example, or for Chino Hills? It's going to pop right up. For resources, there's a state resource opportunity at realimpact.us, realimpact.us, where there's all kinds of information there. But anybody can just Google, Pleasanton, who's my assembly member? And it's going to list it right there with the phone number. And people don't need to be afraid, which, first of all, you said it perfect. The Lord has not given us a spirit of fear. Don't be intimidated by these people. Well, if I call them, what if they yell at me? You're going to get a machine.
Another thing I hear, Pastor Hibbs, another thing I hear is people are literally afraid of getting on the radar because they're afraid they're going to be targeted. Like people like you and me, we're always targeted. We've gotten used to it. But most people, I've heard that more than once. Well, I don't want to get involved. I just don't want I don't want to be on their radar.
That's a form of surrender, and I despise it.
Isn't it?
Surrendering like that is not good in a republic. It's not good in a family. It's not good in your faith. Never are we to recoil. You said it about being silent. Well, I'm not going to get involved because I could get in trouble. Listen, if all of us coalesced and said, let's get in trouble, let's get in the right kind of trouble. If Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi is your enemy, that's good. Jesus said, be careful when everyone speaks well of you, because if they speak well of you, you're no friend of the Father's. Think of that. If the world is doing what it's doing, and it is at breakneck speed, and you don't say anything, and yet you claim to know God, then something's very wrong. Something's very wrong. It doesn't mean, I'm not asking people to go and be belligerent or ugly or dumb.
No.
If you get smacked for that, you probably deserve it.
Right.
But if you stand up and say, listen, it's wrong to kill babies, it's wrong to teach my kids sex in public school, and we're not going to stand for it. We're going to vote you out. That's the government God has given us. And when people no longer understand the civics that governs their daily lives, then we can be taken captive in a moment.
It is no accident that civics and American government in general has been taken out of public education. Absolutely.
Exactly
for that reason.
Right.
Absolutely. This is Pastor Jack Hibbs. Where do we find you? I know you got a website. I know you're on social media. Where do we find you to follow you and find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, the simplest thing is just to go to jackhibs.com. Jackhibs.com has got all of our events, all of the teachings, Sundays, Wednesdays, everything in between, Bible studies, and upcoming events. They'll find out from there regarding, for example, what do we do next in Sacramento regarding the AB 2223. We're going to be back up there testifying before the Senate. And it's all there, jackhibs.com. They can grow in their knowledge of God, and yep.
And what's going on?
And how do you spell Hibbs? Not everybody might know.
Yep, Hibbs, Hibbs.
JackHibbs.com, fully worth it. And when you come back up to Sacramento, I sure hope to know, and I would love to get together with you and actually shake your hand and meet you and get a picture with you. I just think it's extraordinary. The work you're doing is just fantastic. Go with God. Vaya con Dios, my brother in Christ Jesus.
Charlie, let's do it. God bless you, my friend.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Pastor Jack Hibbs, doing amazing work. And I got to talk to him again, because one thing I forgot to ask him is, can you imagine if the church would have stepped up in 1973 with the Roe v. Wade thing, or even earlier? Let's go to the early 60s. If the church would have stepped up and Christians would have said something about taking prayer out of schools, where would we be now if they would have stepped up then? I'm not going to be quiet now. I'm not going to be silent. Not going to happen. You can cancel me. You can platform. You can take me off the platforms. You can fire me from they did from the radio station I was working on. I'm going to keep speaking out because that's what the Lord put on my heart. I'm Charlie Simons. This is Do Not Talk.